All right. We are here and we are about to make a very, very long couple of videos here. Um, Let me just make a disclaimer right beforehand, a couple of disclaimers right beforehand. Uh, these next two videos are going to be very long. So I totally get it if you don't stick around through the whole thing. I don't even think I would stick around through the whole thing. I'm basically just doing this for myself. But yes, this is my pick. These are my picks for the top 100 greatest albums ever made. I've been making this list for months now, editing it, putting albums in, taking albums out, putting albums in and taking them out a couple days later. And after much editing, this is what I came up with right here on my computer screen. This is a big deal, so I brought out the Blue Yeti. I I'm doing this. Now, this is me uncut. I'm not going to I'm not going to do much editing to this because this is all raw. This is all me. I'm gonna move this up a little bit. This is all me. This is just me talking, basically. And I know that it is kind of impossible to do a list like this. There's no such thing as the greatest album ever made. Now, obviously, there are albums that are better than other albums, but you can't ever definitively say what the greatest album ever made is. So, this is basically just my opinion, but this is what I believe are the top 100 greatest albums ever made. And, if I say so myself, I'd say that this is actually a really good list. I looked into all genres, all different types of music, all decades. This is what I came up with. So, in order to keep this video from being 3 hours long, let's get into it. This is part 1, number 100 through number 51. Alright, we'll kick it off right here with number 100. The number 100 greatest album ever made is Dreamboat Annie by Heart, released in 1976. Now, I didn't do any research on the years the albums were released. If I say a year, like if I mention a year, that's coming off of the top of my head, so it's a chance it could be wrong. And that my bad if it is. But yeah, number 100 is Dreamboat Annie by Heart. It's Heart's best album. No doubt about that. It is. It's a amazing introduction to mainstream rock, and it's a wonderful introduction to mainstream rock that has front women instead of a front man. So yeah, this album it broke a lot of barriers. It made a lot of things happen in the music industry that no one really saw until that point. So that's why it's on there. Plus, it just has a bunch of good songs. Plus, yeah, plus this album just has a ton of great songs on it. My favorite being the title track, Dreamboat Annie. Number 99, Dreaming of You by Selena Quintanilla. Released in 1995, I want to say. And it's a fantastic Spanish pop fusion album. And it's incredible. It's an incredible album. Definitely her magnum opus until her unfortunate death that occurred shortly after this album came out. I would say that my favorite track on the album is probably either the title track or I Could Fall in Love with You. That's another really good one. But yeah, it's so many good tracks on this album, made by a legendary Mexican singer, and yeah, it definitely deserves to be up there with some of the greatest albums that ever came out in the 1990s. Number 98, we have Rocks by Aerosmith, which is just an incredible rock album, an incredible 70s rock album. Steven Tyler really showing off his incredible pipes he has. Last Child is probably the best song on the album. If it was up to me, that's what I would say. And I mean, it's just an incredible 70s rock album. We all know about it. We all know about this album. We all know what it stands for, and it definitely deserves a spot on this list. It didn't feel right not putting this album on the list, so there it is. Number 97 is Cloud 9 by The Temptations. An incredible late 60s, early 70s soul record. We all know The Temptations. We all know their legendary status in the music industry. So just like Aerosmith, it didn't feel right leaving out their magnum opus on this list. Number 96, everybody's favorite presidential candidate, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West. One of the greatest modern one of the greatest modern rap albums that we have seen, and we are fairly confident that Kanye West will never put out anything, even close to this. But I mean, you got to give him props for putting it together for this album, because it is absolutely incredible and definitely worth a listen. There are some people who will put this album inside the top 20 or maybe even the top 15. I don't think it deserves to be up that high, but it definitely deserves to be on this list, and it peaks out at number 96. Number 95, I don't have time to say this whole title. I'm just going to say When the Pawn by Fiona Apple. It's an incredible 1990s album. Fiona Apple, one of the greatest lyricists we will probably ever hear. I wouldn't even say it's that crazy to say that she is the best lyricist in music. And she really shows off the strengths in this album, and the the lyrical ability alone is enough to get this album on this list. So there it is at number 95. Number 94, one of the greatest prog rock records ever made. Number 94 is In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson, released in 1969. This was the album that changed prog rock forever. It set up what prog rock was going to sound like in the 1970s. And I just have to thank King Crimson, because some of my favorite albums I've ever listened to are 70s prog rock records, and they probably wouldn't even exist if it wasn't for this record. So thank you, King Crimson, and you earned your spot on this list. Number 93. I'm going to be honest, I don't know how to pronounce this. I've always pronounced it Aja, but it could be like Aja or Aha even. But I'm just going to say Aja just because that's what I've always called it ever since I was really little. Aja by Steely Dan. It's one of the... It's probably the best jazz rock album. There's only a couple of like albums that I would say compete or could be better, and I think one or two of them appear on this list, and they are a little higher. But no, this is an incredible record. It's an incredible record. It shows up high on a Rolling Stone's top 500 albums of all time list too. So we both know this record, and we both know just how great and how much of a game changer this album was in jazz rock. Number 92, I don't think I'd be wrong if I said this was the greatest rap album of the 2010s. To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. Absolutely stunning. It's an absolutely stunning rap album. As somebody who doesn't really listen to rap all that much, I liked this record, which is really saying something. It's an incredible album, and it definitely earns a spot on this list. It is incredible. Number 91, Graceland by Paul Simon. In terms of his solo career, Paul Simon, this is his magnum opus. There is one record on this list from Simon and Garfunkel that appears. But other than that, this is his best album. This is better than anything Art ever put out. And better than almost anything the two of them together put out. It's an incredible album, and definitely worth a listen if you've never listened to it before. Number 90, an album released by the greatest a cappella group to ever exist. And as soon as you hear their name, you're going to probably be like, they weren't really a cappella. There were a lot of songs they did that weren't, but when they did do a cappella, oh my goodness, were they the best. Pentatonics Who? Yeah, no, it's not Pentatonics. Number 90 is Coolie High Harmony by Boys to Men, released in 1991. It's So Hard to Say Goodbye to Yesterday alone is enough to submit these guys as the greatest a cappella group to ever do it, and this is probably the best a cappella album. I guess it's not a cappella. It's not an a cappella album, but it is definitely it definitely has some of the greatest a cappella songs ever written, and some of the best 90s R&B type singles too. So it definitely deserves to be on this list. Number 89, the second greatest Southern rock album ever made, Struttin' My Stuff by Elvin Bishop's Big Fun Trio, released in 1975. What else do I need to say about it? It's the second greatest Southern rock album ever made. These guys, Elvin Bishop, dude, he could play. Not only did he have all the pizzazz that I kind of wish I had, and all of the, the spunk that I kind of wish I had, but he could put together an album, and his magnum opus was definitely this. One of my favorite songs of the 1970s, Fooled Around and Fell in Love, which is a little bit different from the other tracks on that album, but it's still incredible. And you guys might disagree, but no, this album definitely belongs on this list. Number 88. Is this the first one that I have? Alright, hang on one second. Number 88. If I have an album on vinyl, I'll probably pull out the vinyl, just, show off the collection a little bit as well. But number 88 is Close to You by the Carpenters, released in 1970. This is my favorite album to just relax to, because it's a very relaxing, very nice soft rock album. And, soft rock doesn't get enough praise, I guess. And the Carpenters, they were the golden children of soft rock, I'll tell you what. Great record. Yeah, just looking at this record, going through everything, it is a fantastic record. The best song is the title track, I would say. But I'll tell you what, looking at these other tracks, I'll tell you that the other tracks that could possibly be the best on this are Crescent Moon, which is just absolutely incredible. And I also really like Reason to Believe, which is another track off of this album, and that's also a really, really good record. So, one of the best soft rock records ever made, right here, and it deserves to be on this list. We'll put it back. Number 87. It's the first of a few submissions from this band on this list. Number 87 is Some Girls by Rolling Stones, released in 1978. An absolutely magnificent rock album. And you know how Mick Jagger likes his rock. He likes it with a little bit more rhythm and more, just stuff you can just strut to, essentially. And this album definitely has a lot of that, especially especially with the song everybody knows off the record, Miss You. That has more of a disco vibe to it, and not all the songs on that record are, they're not that funky. But it's probably the best song off of that album. And it's just a great album to listen to. It is an incredible album to listen to. And I don't think anybody there will disagree with me on that. Number 86, another one. Found it. Number 86. Not including Pink Floyd, because I don't know if Pink Floyd counts. I never really counted them as a prog rock band. So not including Pink Floyd, this is probably the greatest prog rock record ever made. Close to the Edge by Yes. Look at that album art. Yeah, this is This is the prog rock record right here. The prog rock record. Gosh, what a great album. Close to the Edge, the title track, all 23 minutes of it. Or, yeah, it's like 23. I'm pretty sure it's like 23. That song and all of its parts are absolutely insane to me. Like, when I think of prog rock, the sound that generates off of this album, it's what I think of. This is prog rock at its purest form. And we have to protect this album at all costs. This is an original from the year it came out, which was, what, 72, 73? Something along the lines of that. This is an original copy. It could be worth something. I don't even know. But this is the prog rock record of all prog rock records. And once again, I don't think anyone will disagree with me there. All right, moving on. Where are we? Number 85. Number 85 is Breakfast in America by Supertramp. This was released in 79, I want to say. And, yeah. Yeah, this is a questionable one, I think you're probably thinking. But it definitely deserves to be on here because it is... I have so much fun listening. I don't know about you guys, but I have an absolute blast listening to this album. Every song on it just makes me feel a certain way. And I think that's just because of their really unique sound that they had going on for them, especially in the late 1970s. Their sound was unmatched by anyone else. And you gotta give them credit for that. Plus, Take the Long Way Home is just a great song to drive home to at night. You know, just driving at night, listening to that it always takes, you know, it always puts out the right vibe. And I mean, I've said enough there. This album, top 85 album of all time, heck yeah. Number 84 is Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits. This is their best record. This is their magnum opus. Check out Guitar George. He knows all the chords. Obviously, the best track off of the album is probably the most well-known. But just like Supertramp, these guys had a very unique sound, and it worked so well, and it was something that nobody else was doing at the time. And you just gotta give them credit. You gotta give them credit where credit is due, because it's an incredible album. It is absolutely incredible. Number 83, another 1970s album. The 1970s is a great decade for albums. I'll tell you what. Number 83 is Something Anything by Todd Rundgren. Todd Rundgren, the legend, just wants to bang on his drums all day. I probably would have never known about him if it wasn't for the pilot episode of that 70s show. And, you know, that show has brought me so much happiness, and it also brought me other things, like the discovery of Todd Rundgren. I probably would have figured out who he was eventually, but I found out who he was very early on in my life, thanks to that show. And gosh, it's such a great album. Hello, It's Me, which is probably his most well-known song off of the album, is it's just a legendary song. It is a great legendary song on the softer side. Man, what a song. What an album. Number 82. I feel like some of you were probably expecting this album. Number 82 is Diana by Diana Ross, released in 1980. Diana Ross, obviously she did solo work before this, but this was the album that put her, this was the album that helped her cross the line between just an incredible musician, singer, into the legendary greatest of all time tier. And I mean, when an album does something like that for your career, of course it's going to get thrown on here. It's a great album. It's a great album. And it was what made her go from great to legendary. Number 81. This is one of a few albums, I'm pretty sure. These guys have a little bit of foreshadowing there. They have one. I know they have at least one that's up more on the list. Number 81 is Something Else by the Kinks. Now, for anybody that ever says that the Kinks are watered down Beatles, I hate you, and you're wrong. These guys had a pretty different sound going by this time. They had a very unique sound they were producing, and with a record like this, you can't not just like every song and look up these songs on YouTube or Spotify or something and listen to them. And this is their second best album in their discography, I would say. I know that there's at least one that's up here. And it's their big. I mean, you probably already knew. If not, spoiler alert, it's the big album by them. You know, the big one that everybody knows. So, foreshadowing, that's coming up soon. Or I guess not soon, because I think it might be in the first part. It might be in the part 2 video, but whatever. Number 80. One of the most current, pun intended, albums on this list. It's Currents by Tame Impala. This album creates a vibe and a feel I didn't know existed. And these guys get used so much in modern media that it's impossible to not know about this album if you are an avid internet user. But there's reason for that, and it's because it's a great album. It is a great modern alternative rock album. I would say that this is modern alternative. It might be listed as a different genre, but it all comes back to the big picture, which is alternative rock. Number 79 is Moving Pictures by Rush. I'm not a huge fan of Rush. I think I like 4 or 5 songs by them. I always thought they were boring. Even for their more prog rock sound, I thought they were boring for that. Which I always thought was incredible because they have the greatest drummer to ever live. And they were still boring. But I must admit that this is a fantastic album. It's a borderline prog rock record. I would say it's more prog rock than any other type of rock. And their dedication and hard work and just everything that they put into this album shows. And it is by far their best album, and definitely one that you need to listen to if you have not yet. Number 78, one of the best grunge albums ever made. Number 78 is 10 by Pearl Jam. I'll tell you what, the 90s is home to some great, incredible artists. And these guys, they knew how to write a record. They are the grunge band. I would say that they were a better grunge band than Nirvana. And their craft like this album proves that. Moving on to number 77. That's where we left off. Number 77, the first great metal album ever made, Paranoid, by Black Sabbath, released in 1970. One of the most legendary metal albums to exist. And this was the genre that really, I wouldn't say it was the first ever metal album, but it was definitely the first album to project the metal genre into the mainstream. So, that's always a big deal. Number 76, we are at now. 76 is Arrival by ABBA. One of the best albums of the 1970s. People tend to forget just how legendary ABBA was, just how big they were back in the the late 70s. And this album was pretty much their magnum opus. Every track on the album is good. It's very fondly remembered. It has stood the test of time. And at least like half the songs on this album get used by David Dobrik. So they've even made their way into modern mainstream media as well. So that checks off most of the boxes. So I think it deserves to be there. Number 75, Straight Outta Compton by NWA. This was the protest rap album of them all. This was the one that pushed gangsta rap into the mainstream media, and any album that can project a whole genre into a different level deserves recognition. So there it is. Let's scroll a little bit. Okay. Number 74, the greatest Southern rock album ever made, pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd by Lynyrd Skynyrd. And what else is there to say about it? It's the best Southern rock album ever made. We know this. Their songwriting skills and their whole melody in general, all throughout this album, basically every track is stunning. It's flawless. And this is Southern rock at its best. Not a huge fan of Southern rock all that much, but I have to give credit where credit is due to these guys. They definitely represent Southern pride very well, which is that's something they need, because they're not getting They're not getting a great rap right now. Yeah, you know, they took our jibs. They took our jibs. I hope that if you watch South Park, you understand the reference. Number 73, the Blue album by Weezer, released in 1994. This is Weezer's best album. I personally believe that it is better than their follow-up album, Pinkerton. I'll tell you what, this album, I don't know a better, like, there are very few debut albums that are better than Weezer. They projected themselves. Well, this was their debut album, so they didn't really move from one stage to another. They just moved from the bottom to the top, all in one album, and that is incredible. And, you know, all they needed was this album, and they already went. They were like, by the time that this album came out, all they needed was that one album, and they already cemented themselves as one of the greats in alternative rock. So these guys definitely they definitely deserve to have an entry on this list. Number 72, one of the most famous rock albums ever made, Destroyer by Kiss, released in 1976. Is it bad if I say that my favorite song on this album is Beth? Is that a bad thing? I'm afraid people are going to criticize me for that. My favorite song on the album is Beth. But I'll tell you what, God of Thunder slaps too. And you know, it's just a borderline perfect hard rock album, but it also has the soft moments. Because every metalhead has a soft side to them. You know, these guys, they knew what they were doing on this album. Number 71. The greatest debut album ever made. Van Halen by Van Halen. I did not feel right. On my original rendition of this list, this album was not on there. There was no Van Halen album on this list. And I didn't feel right about that. And then I especially didn't feel right after Eddie Van Halen tragically passed away. So this album did not make an appearance just because Eddie Van Halen passed. It's on here because, like I said, it is probably the greatest debut album of all time. These guys formed the mold for what rock and all music in general would sound like in the coming decade, in 1980. You know, the 1980s. So, thank Van Halen for 80s music. You know, the good 80s music. They were responsible for the good 80s music, not the Air Supply, Climax Blues Band, Tiffany 80s, but the, you know, the good 80s. Number 70. This is, yeah, I forgot about this one. Number 70, The Diary of Alicia Keys by Alicia Keys. A fantastic 90s rap pop record. Did I say 90s? Somebody rewind the tape. Anyways, it's a great album. It's an incredible album. I've always been a fan of Alicia Keys. There's a lot of songs by her that I like, and it's mainly just because I grew up when she was a big deal. But as I got older and I became a more mature fan of music, and I dipped more into music theory, I realized that she had so much talent beyond singing, and it showed. It definitely showed on this record. Number 69. Nice. Number 69 is The Piper at the Gates of Dawn by Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's debut album, released in 1967. One of their most underrated albums and one of their most flawless albums. I wouldn't say that you were wrong if you said that this was their fifth best album behind the four big ones. I wouldn't even call you wrong if you said that this was their second or third best album, because despite the fact that it sounds a little different, they still have an incredible sound. And it was so different for the time. And, in songs like Bike, you could tell where they were trying to go, and you could tell that it was eventually going to sound like how they sounded in the 1970s. So it's a really, really good album. Number 68, question, or Q. Are we not men? A. We are Devo. Yes, Devo is making it on this list. Their 1978 debut album, Q, Are We Not Men? A, We Are Devo. Proto-punk. Get ready. Coming up here in the next, 15, 20, 15, 20 spots. Get ready to see a lot of proto-punk. The proto-punk, some of the best albums ever made are proto-punk albums. And they all come from about the same 3-4 year span. A great set of years for music, and you can thank proto-punk for these guys for this sound that the 80s carried. Like a little earlier when I mentioned Van Halen and how they set the mold for what the 80s were going to sound like, that was more for like heavier stuff and like more rockish type stuff. When you look at pop and new wave and all of the other genres that the 80s produced, proto-punk is what started it pretty much, along with a couple other factors. So these guys need to get a lot of recognition for starting that, because the 80s is a great decade of music. So, but Devo, their debut album, their very influential debut album, is coming up here as well. Number 67 is Loaded by the Velvet Underground. Lou Reed is a different breed, dude. I don't even know. I'm going to give a little bit of a spoiler alert. There's a few Velvet Underground albums on here, but that's because Lou Reed does not know how to make a bad album. And he put some of his best work into the Velvet Underground before he even went on to his solo career and made a bunch of other legendary albums, a couple of which you're going to see on this list. But yeah, their last album, technically second to last, but I don't count Squeeze. They're technically second to last, but I'm going to call it last album, Loaded, coming in at number 67, released in 1970, and it is a fantastic album. The best track on the album, to me, is Oh, Sweet Nothing. I think it has a great set of chords they use there, and, Rock and Roll, that's also a really good track. So, yeah, if you've never listened to the Velvet Underground, listen to them, because it's not just the one album that you're thinking of. It is every album. Every album is fantastic. Number 66, Tusk by Fleetwood Mac, aka Rumor's little sibling. Tusk is it's a great double album. It is a fantastic double album. But yeah, it's not as good as Rumors, but it's still fantastic. Sarah is a great rock song that gives off a more southern acoustic country vibe. And I was in marching band. You know, you cannot be a marching band member without knowing Tusk, and Tusk being the greatest marching band song ever made. That title track. It is, yeah, no. USC. That's the only thing I like about the University of Southern Cali. Tusk. So, yeah. Number 65, Master of Reality by Black Sabbath. The second Black Sabbath album to appear on this list, and I think it's the last. They somehow managed to top Paranoid. I don't even understand how they managed to do that. Ozzy Osbourne, his magnum opus was with Black Sabbath, and I'm pretty sure we all know that. And, I mean, yeah, what is there to say about this album that you guys don't know already? Especially if you're a metalhead. If you're a metalhead, you're probably really mad at me for putting this album so low. But, it showed up, and that's what matters. Number 65, Master of Reality by Black Sabbath. Number 64, going back a couple years before Master of Reality came out, we are looking at Lila by Derek and the Dominoes in 1970. Eric Clapton, a god amongst men. Oh gosh, just thinking about it, I'm just a loss for words. It's a fantastic record, and it probably the best song on the album is probably the title track. I like Lila more than anybody, really should. And Layla, whatever. But I've always had a huge amount of love for this song, more than anybody really humanly should. And I don't know why. All right, now number 61, more proto-punk, Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division, their debut album that was released in 1979. Another one of those incredible proto-punk albums from the late 70s that just shaped music in the 1980s. Transmission is obviously the best track off of that album. A fantastic album. And like I said before, it shaped... It basically shaped what the 80s were going to sound like. Not to mention that it also sparked new wave. It's also one of the first real new wave albums that came out. Number 60, Hotel California by the Eagles. You probably thought that this was going to be on here. It's a legendary album. It has such a status in the music community, so duh. There's not much to say about that. This album is obviously going to be on there. Number 59, Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones. One of their best records. Like the last Rolling Stones album that I mentioned on this list, it's the Rolling Stones. They're going to have a bunch of albums on here. They know how to write perfect rock albums. And this is another one. This is another perfect rock album that they made. I gotta say it, these guys might be better than the Beatles. They might be better than the Beatles. Number 58, we're going to bump it up a few decades here. Number 58, The Low End Theory by A Tribe Called Quest. I'm sure a lot of you guys were expecting this album on here. It's a fantastic rap record from the 1990s. And it was kind of a more experimental sound, something that we haven't really seen or heard a lot of, especially in 1992 or whatever year this came out. So you really gotta give a round of applause to these guys for playing around with the sound, creating something different, and making it sound so good. A fantastic album, just a absolutely phenomenal album. Number 57, the B-52s by the B-52s, their debut album from 1979, more proto-punk. I guess this one is it's more just straight new wave than it is proto-punk. But, it still featured, bits of both. And it still is one of those albums that helped define what the 1980s were going to be. And, Rock Lobster is obviously that's probably the most famous song off of that album, and it is absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I mean it's just another one of those new wave proto punk albums that helped shape the greatest and helped determine what the greatest decade in music was going to be. So you got to thank these guys. You got to thank them. Number 56, the first successful white rappers besides Rappin' Rodney. Licensed to Ill by the Beastie Boys, released in 1986. It's a fantastic rap album. Mike D spits some bars, as always. And, yeah, the best song on this album is obviously You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party. Despite the fact that it's not really a rap song, it's still really good. But Brass Monkey and No Sleep Till Brooklyn, which are also songs that came off of this album, fantastic as well. Paul Revere, that's probably my personal favorite song off of the album, is great too. And we can't talk about this album without mentioning the greatest novelty song to come out of their whole discography, I think, Girls. A song that I can play literally every instrument of by myself. Yeah, it's this is a simple album, but it just works. And of course, this thing was destined to go down in history as one of the best rap albums ever made. It definitely is. And I'm sure you guys expected to see it on this list. Let's see. We're moving pretty fast here now. Number 55, Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel. Yes. A fantastic album. This is both of their guys' magnum opus, whether it comes to their, Simon and Garfunkel days or their solo years. This is their magnum opus. Paul and Art, man. Boy, did they just know what they were doing, especially on this album. Cecilia is my favorite track off of this album, but I mean, honestly, any track off of this album could be it could be considered the best. It's just an amazing album. But we already know basically everything there is to know about it. You guys knew it was going to be on here. There it is, number 55. The top 55 album of all time. I'd say that's pretty fair. Number 54, one of the greatest 90s records to ever be produced. What's the Story, Morning Glory by Oasis. I thought that this album was a little bit better than any of Oasis's other albums, especially Be Here Now. But yeah, it's just like Licensed to Ill. It's a simple album. It's a little bit more on the simple side. but at the same time, it has so much to it. And you know, these guys, they only had like 2 or 3 good albums, but man, did they put it together for those albums. Obviously, infighting killed them. The brothers fighting, you know, that killed their momentum. But they may have been toxic to each other, but boy, could they write an album back in their prime. Oh man, a great 90s alternative record. Number 53. Of course, we were going to see it on here. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We all knew it was coming up. Here it is. Are You Experienced by Jimi Hendrix, or the Jimi Hendrix Experience. But everyone else is irrelevant. Who really matters here is the mastermind, Jimi Hendrix. Of course, this album was going to show up on here. We knew it was. Now that I think about it, I think I may have put it a little low. I definitely may have put it a little low, but I'm not changing it now. I have gone through too much trouble making this video. I'm not changing it now and refilming. So, number 53, it can be higher and I won't complain. Are You Experienced by the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Number 52, the Slim Shady EP by Eminem. Released in 99? I think. I honestly don't. I'm not too sure about the year. But it's a fantastic record. One of the best rap albums that exist. And it comes from a white dude. Now, I haven't really gotten into much of the... I haven't gotten into much of the other legendary rap albums. That's because I am well aware that they are better than this album, and most of them are here. Hang on. But yeah, this album is up here. Here it is. It's a great a legendary rap album that I'm sure everybody knows. Everybody knows Eminem. Everybody knows what he does. Everybody knows what he did. Yeah, so of course this album is here. Number 51. The first of many. No, we already had one before of these guys. The second of many. Wish You Were Here by the Pink Floyd. Released in 1975. I do personally believe that this album is their weakest out of their 4 big albums, but using the term weakest isn't fair because it's absolutely incredible. It's an absolutely incredible album. Wish You Were Here, the title track, is absolutely fantastic, and Shine On You Crazy Diamond is a masterpiece. I'm going to call it prog rock, despite the fact that it might not be. But yeah, no, these guys, Pink Floyd. I'll tell you what, boy, could they write an album. But you knew that this was going to be on here, and I guess we'll just we'll stop there. We're at 51. 50 is coming up next, so we'll do the top half. In part 2. I gotta get part 1 edited. So, yeah, we'll cut it off there. This video is over an hour long, I'm pretty sure. I've filmed this in parts, so I don't know if it's over an hour. It probably adds up to over an hour. If you've stuck with it, good for you. I don't know what you're doing. You must have a lot of free time. But, good for you. And I will see you guys in part 2. 50 through number 1.